Hello everybody out there, how are you doing? Welcome back to Rule of Two Review. And today we're going to discuss something a little bit sad, but something very near and dear to my heart. And that is the Wii U. Yes, the Wii U. I'm going to talk about Nintendo's previous console that we all know was an unfortunate failure here in the wake of the Nintendo Switch and the fact that that's coming out in a couple of weeks, and it's all most of us have been talking about. I've made so many videos discussing so many facets of the Switch because it's awesome. It's exciting. We all can't wait to get it. It's a new generation console. It's a new generation Nintendo console. But I don't want to leave the Wii U out of the conversation completely. And there's a lot of, I think, facets about the Wii U and the unique sort of story that is that console that are important to talk about, and that I also just find interesting because, like I said, I am a fan of the Wii U. So like I said, as excited as we all are for the Nintendo Switch in just 2.5 weeks' time, I want to discuss really what the legacy of the Wii U is going to be. I think it's important to do so because I think that it's fair to say, and I've said this even a few times, that a lot of how the Wii U story did play out, I think has very, very importantly influenced Nintendo on what they've decided to do with the Switch. I mean, you could argue that Nintendo's push and always continuing to strive for innovation is probably part of what created the Switch as the system it is, but it's also entirely possible that if certain things played out differently with the Wii U, that the next Nintendo console we would have gotten could have been something very different than what the Switch has turned out to be, for myriad reasons. But regardless, we live in a world where the Wii U's story for 4.5 years played out the way it did, not very successful. Nintendo's new console is the handheld console hybrid thing that we know the Switch to be, and it looks great. It's going to be fantastic. We all can't wait to get it. But the Wii U is such an important system, and in my opinion, such an excellent system. There are so many fun, unique, and exclusive games on that console that I still love playing it to this day, and I still love talking about it, even though it doesn't seem to be on the forefront of anyone's mind anymore, because it's all Switch with a tiny bit of Scorpio. It's like, I don't want to leave the Wii U out of the conversation. I think there's some cool stuff to talk about. So the real crux of the conversation that I just wanted to have with you guys today really quickly is whether or not the Wii U, the system that you've heard me say I love so much, will be fondly remembered. That's an important question, I think, because there are a lot of other systems that have gone through rocky roads and short lifespans, and in some instances maybe have killed a company's console line of products, but still are very fondly remembered and held in high regard, and for good reason. Obviously, the Dreamcast is the number one system that I'm talking about there. And I feel like the Wii U is in the same conversation. Bottom line, if the Wii U will be fondly remembered, I do think the answer ultimately, and for the most part, is yes, which makes my heart very happy when I actually let myself realize, yeah, I think the Wii U is probably going to be seen as a pretty great system in the grand scheme of things. Now, right now, we're in the period where the Wii U is the immediate and most recent disaster for Nintendo. So if you were to talk about the Switch in January and February, or the Switch, oh my god, see how much I've been doing that? If you were to talk about the Wii U in January and February of 2016, it's like, oh man, the Wii U, I mean, that thing sucked, that thing was a failure, Nintendo made so many mistakes, what were they thinking? Oh my god, terrible. That's what a lot of people feel. I don't feel that way, but a lot of people do, and that's the conversation that some people may have around it, and I do understand why, because it was a failure. But I think that when we get farther removed from the Wii U, and when we're, a couple of years into the Switch, maybe at the end of the Switch or even into the next console, and it's, 5 or 10 years down the road, I think that when we look at the history of video games and the history of Nintendo's consoles, 5 and 10 years down the road, and we have to factor in, the Super Nintendo was great, the 64 was great, the GameCube was great, the Wii U I think was great. Some people may have different things to say, or the Wii, and then of course the Wii U, it's like, well, I think that was also a great system. I think that will be the conversation in the future. Like I was alluding to, just like the Dreamcast. I feel like the Dreamcast is the system that when it came out, everyone loved it. It was so surprising and revolutionary. I will never forget that first year we had a Dreamcast, and what having Soul Calibur and Sonic Adventure in that launch week really was for my younger brother and myself. That was the most mind-blowing shit we'd ever seen and played, and it was great. And then, of course, the Dreamcast only had a 2-year life cycle before it was discontinued and Sega stopped making hardware for all time. That was the end of Sega's hardware line because of the Dreamcast's failure. That being said, in the heat of the moment in 1990, well, not 1999 it launched, in 2000 and 2001 and 2, people were like, oh, the Dreamcast is dumb. Like, what a failure the Dreamcast was. That was the conversation people had about it. But nowadays, so many staunch, hardcore Dreamcast fans and supporters exist. Mizzy, my main man, who I do the podcast with, you guys all obviously know him. He's a huge Dreamcast fan, and for good reason. And nowadays, the Dreamcast is held in that high regard, and it is fondly remembered as a great machine, a great console in the history of gaming consoles, and one of the best machines that Sega ever put out, disregarding the fact that it was a 2-year failure and it literally killed Sega's console market. To be fair, other poor business decisions leading up to the Dreamcast really lent to that as well, but the Dreamcast being the final console they made and the Dreamcast being not successful enough to save Sega kind of also means it's in the conversation of the system that sort of killed Sega's console market. So there's so much negative surrounding the story of the Dreamcast, but there's also so much positive in terms of the quality of the hardware and the games that it's seen as a success in the minds and hearts of gamers. And that is what I think the Wii U is also going to be, which, like I said, does fill my heart with happiness and makes me feel so good to realize that. Because, yes, the Wii U was a failure commercially, and the Wii U did not sell well, and it did not make the money for Nintendo that they wanted. It did not strengthen their brand in the way that they wanted. And right now, in 2017, we all know that, and that's how we think of the Wii U currently. But in the future, I do think everyone's going to look back on it and say, well, the system and the hardware was really great and really quality. The gamepad was a unique, cool feature that, you know, did succeed in a lot of what it was trying to do. Even if a lot of developers didn't take advantage of it, it did what it was supposed to do for a lot of games and for what Nintendo was initially trying to get out there. And the games were great, and the library was great, and the exclusives were awesome. And look at this library of, 25, 30 excellent games on the Wii U that are mostly exclusive, mostly first party to be fair as well, a couple of third parties in there. And I feel like that's the thing that when we look at it from the future and we're looking at it in a past tense, that's when people are going to see it as a pretty awesome and successful console. So at the end of the day, does this really matter? Right now, no, it doesn't matter. Like I said, it is important. I think it's important when discussing Nintendo as a company and their entire history. I think it's important when discussing what decisions and what successes and failures in the company led them to decide to make the Switch the way it is. Now that we all know it's going to be the super awesome, great thing and we can't wait to play it, it is certainly important in that pantheon of Nintendo and video game history. But does it matter? Not really. It's like a console, whatever console it is, whether it's a huge success or a flaming disaster, really only it matters at the time that its life exists. It's very rare that we look at the life of a console and we actually apply it to the next system that's coming out. This is one of those instances where that kind of is what's happening. But for the most part, it's not like this is a conversation that I think a lot of people need to be discussing. But I thought that it was a very interesting idea, and I'm sitting here thinking, oh man, every day I'm counting down. The Switch and Breath of the Wild comes out in another day, and then another day, and another day, and we're all following our own internal countdown clocks for when the Switch and Zelda finally launch, and we have this stuff to play, and we can start our brand new Nintendo generation. But in the same breath, every time that happens, I also think, man, I love the Wii U though. What about the Wii U? What about this great machine that Nintendo really tried hard with at first? And this great product they made with some absolutely amazing games that will go down as some of my favorite of all time. It sucks that we have to be forgetting this. And I see everyone moving on to the Switch, and I see Nintendo moving on. I mean, we all know the story of how Nintendo barely supported it in the Wii U in its last year. And, discontinued, stopped making the console a couple of months ago, way before the Switch, their next console even comes on the market. So Nintendo moved on, so the gamer and the consumer moved on, and it makes me sad to see this console that I know and I believe in my heart truly is a very quality product from Nintendo with an amazing library, and to see it just be forgotten. And, to see, for all intents and purposes, to see it be shat on, right now, and it just hurts me, and it makes me a little bit sad as a fan of the console. So it's like I wanted to have this conversation. I thought it would be fun, and I was hoping to instill a little bit of positivity surrounding the Wii U and just surrounding video games in general, because whenever something bad or dramatic happens, that's the stuff that we all get excited about and everyone jumps on and makes videos about and discuss on Twitter and all that stuff, which I get, and I've certainly done that in the past as well. But I just wanted to talk about something a little bit more low-key, something not so crazy, and to just talk about what I think is one of Nintendo's best products that they've ever made, even if it didn't sell well, and even if the third-party support was shite, which really sucks and makes me mad sometimes. it was a pretty great little machine, man. The Wii U, the little console that could, you know, even though it technically really couldn't, I think. And what a weird, crazy story the Wii U's one is and will turn out to be in the future. So what do you guys think? Do you think the legacy of the Wii U will be strong? Do you think that in 5 or 10 years, a lot of us, yourself, the gaming public, and the media, will they look back on the Wii U with high regard and say, you know, we know it didn't sell well, and Nintendo did a lot of things wrong with it, but it was a great little product for what it was. I think when looked at it in its own little 4-year bubble in the future, people are going to say that 4-year bubble was a pretty great little product. That's what I think. Do you agree, or do you think the Wii U's complete shit now, and it's always going to be shit? It'll make me sad to hear that, but if it's how you feel, it's how you feel, and you should definitely share your thoughts on it below. So that's it for this fun little distraction video, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed. I really enjoyed talking about this with you because I do love me some Wii U. But man, am I excited for the Switch. It's coming so soon. Breath of the Wild, I can't wait. So what do you guys think? Discuss the Wii U and all that fun stuff below. Thanks, of course, as always, for tuning in, guys. This is Rob of Rule of Two Review, and I will catch you next time on another video.